Is Joe Biden really the leader of the free world? To casual observers, things have changed overnight since Joe took over the Oval Office, and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and the Democrats took control of Congress. A frail Joe Biden has signed at least 37 executive orders and has not given a press conference in over 50 days as president, and seems unwilling or unable to explain his most controversial policies. The Democratic takeover of the Senate continues before a mainly unquestioning or openly biased media. While there is no threat to the safety of members of Congress, thousands of members of the National Guard and 4 miles of security fencing protects the US Capitol complex, likening the Capitol grounds to a war zone. The fence, topped by razor wire, also surrounds the Supreme Court, the Library of Congress, and other government buildings. What message are the Democrats sending? Pandemic restrictions continue to restrict the movement and rights of American citizens, in spite of a vaccine and the steep drop in COVID-19 cases. But Biden has removed southern border restrictions, allowing illegal immigrants and felons from COVID-ravaged Mexico and other countries to flood in. Now, to placate growing public anger about the damage government has done to American businesses and public education during this pandemic, trillions of dollars have been dished out by the administration, with more to come. All the while, big tech, which facilitated the Democratic election victory along with mainstream media, presents a growing threat to free speech, not to mention threats issued from the leaders of key institutions such as the FBI and the Department of Defense. There's no better person to share his insights on present-day America and where this once great country is headed. Trevor FitzGibbon is president of Silent Partner and an award-winning PR strategist. His work has primarily focused on defending human rights, whistleblowers, and exposing corruption throughout his career. Trevor's clients have ranged from Google and Amnesty International to Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, Chelsea Manning, Google Foundation, and, I love it, Pearl Jam. He has built and led a multi-million-dollar communications firm working with companies, organizations, and individuals on cutting-edge campaigns. He also handled media relations for the Obama campaign in the state of New Mexico in 2008. Trevor, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Look, you've represented Julian Assange. What is a threat that he still represents to the US administration after all these years?
I think that as a publisher, Julian and WikiLeaks have been a threat because they expose corruption and simply get the truth out, and a lot of things that powerful forces would rather be concealed. And I think that's the fundamental issue. If you notice, after Assange was taken from the embassy, really after they cut off his internet inside the embassy, but really when he was taken, without any charges, there began a very aggressive information operation happening not only internationally, but especially in the United States. And it was an information operation that was incredibly powerful, much like the same types of information ops that are used in countries such as Afghanistan or Iraq when you're at war. It's not designed simply to influence the voter or the public, but these information operations are designed to get the public to act a certain way. And I think that Julian was the biggest threat to that type of information operation, and that's why he needed to be silenced. And it wasn't partisan. It was simply he was a threat to the system.
How is Julian holding up at the moment?
Well, first of all, just to be clear, I'm not a spokesperson for the organization anymore. I used to work with them quite a bit. But my observations that he is having a difficult time, as anybody would, in the conditions he's been in. But I think he is obviously a fighter, as is his partner Stella, and the organization and the organization's team in and of itself are fighters. And so they keep pushing forward, and it's very admirable.
Who or what can help get him out of prison?
Well, at this point, and I'm not an expert, so don't quote me. And there are others such as Jen Robinson, attorneys and official spokespeople who could answer that much better than I could. But certainly the Biden administration could. Although I find that very much a stretch. I pretty much view the Biden administration as not only the Obama administration, but also the Clinton, what would have been the Clinton administration had Hillary won. I think that those in power in the United States want an information operation that is taking place right now to continue. They want to have control. They want to have critics of the accepted mainstream narrative deplatformed. I think that's why you have people like Glenn Greenwald and Matt Taibbi and a number of other very well-respected journalists leaving their traditional news outlets and going to places like Substack, where they can have independent voices. I think that the Biden administration, on one hand, what Democratic administration would want to have a major press freedom fight on its hands in the first year of its administration? Like, who in their right mind would want that? But I've just come to believe that a lot of these folks, there's so much corruption, there is so much power, there is so much control, there is so much collusion between big tech and big government and the media, that there's so much of it that it wouldn't surprise me if the Biden administration just, what ordinarily an administration would be cautious of, they probably don't give a shit. They're probably just going to go for it. And we've already seen indications that they're going to continue. They're going to appeal the ruling that was made not too long ago on extraditing Assange, and they're going to keep fighting. They just don't care. These people, they literally don't care. They have so much power at their fingertips right now. It's interesting. I was reading an old Carl Bernstein article that was in Rolling Stone in the 70s, and he was talking about, the findings of the Church Committee, and, that was tasked with talking about what role did the intelligence community play with the media. And, Bernstein was kind of laughing because he said the Church Committee overlooked so much collusion between the CIA and the media. The head of CBS, the head of CBS News. I mean, they were all working hand in hand with the CIA back then. And, that was in the 70s. Lord knows where we're at now. Mm. And I doubt that the Biden administration wants to have something similar to the Church Committee findings again.
You're very strong on truth and justice. Is that is that what is missing at the moment from, say, most Western democracies? I look at Britain, I look at Australia, and we all look at the US.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, look, I was no fan of the Trump administration at all. And it's a difficult place to be, because when you're a leftist and support progressive principles, human rights, the environment, etc., it puts you in a very awkward position when you have democratic administrations that, in my opinion, have sold out a lot of their principles, and a lot of the progressive movement as well. A lot of their principles in exchange for short-term political expediency, for a power grab, and to see truth tellers like Glenn Greenwald, Shara Atkinson, Lara Logan, others condemned by progressive organizations who condemn them for daring to criticize Hunter Biden or Joe Biden or anything having to do with the Obama administration, is a real travesty. I spent 8 years working side by side during the lead up to the Iraq War and shortly thereafter against a Republican administration, based on principles. Lying to the American people about weapons of mass destruction, etc., surveillance, illegal surveillance. So then to turn around and, I always remember, you turn around and fast forward a bit under an Obama administration, and you have Edward Snowden, the whistleblower, truth teller, disclose the level and the extent of surveillance of the American people. And those same fighters, people, progressives, I fought side by side with, who went after Bush on less, were nowhere to be found. And in fact, not only were they nowhere to be found, many of them were just outright hostile. So there's too many partisan hacks and not enough people sticking to their principles, unfortunately. And that's what we really need, a big dose of that in the United States.
What do you think is greater, the greater evil, government or big tech?
No, we've already seen. I mean, big tech. I mean, big tech is clearly more powerful than big government. I mean, Twitter suspended or banned the president of the United States from having a Twitter account. So you tell me who's more powerful. I mean, look, I think a number of those tweets, there are things that Trump would do that were just beyond belief to me. But he was the president, and the idea that you're going to have a company take into its own hands whether or not they can silence the elected president of the United States, and they did silence him, as well as a number of other social media companies. Like, that is appalling, and then I think it also speaks to the train had left the station with Trump, and we now know that many chambers of commerce's, major big corporations that have traditionally been conservative and Republican, they had formed an unwritten alliance with many labor unions in the United States and progressive activists that no matter who won the election, they were not going to recognize Donald Trump as the winner. And so it's a wild time, dystopia.
Award-winning journalist Trish Wood is very critical of mainstream media, says they're just an amplification of government and big tech, etc. No hard questions, nada, the same thing. Just almost like a PR firm, which you would have some experience in. Are you surprised at the speed of this tsunami of, say, misinformation and censorship? Did you sort of think that COVID was that trigger that really took us over the edge. We had the anti-Trump years, 4.5 years of that. I was just waiting to hear there was a Martian in bed with him. I mean, that's what would have come out next. But are you surprised at how fast this has become, the control, the censorship, the misinformation?
I am a bit. How quickly the information operation has moved and has taken over and really embedded itself in every form of society, whether it is big tech to the State Department, to the Department of Justice, to government on the federal level, to the mainstream media, to journalism schools, and I'll tell you I'll tell you an example real quick. Just a quick little story. It was before the election. I was talking to a very dear friend of mine who is a true progressive, a leftist, and somebody who is not a fan of the DNC, for example, but a guy I've always respected. And I was talking to him about Hunter Biden and the laptop that was found, and a lot of the disclosures that were coming out of it, and the unwillingness of any mainstream journalist to do any story on it, except to report on it as Russian propaganda, and quoting from a letter that Brennan and some of his intel buddies had pulled together. And I said, there are standards in journalism, right? Like, you investigate something, see if it has legs, and whether it's Trump or Hillary or Biden or Obama, like, doesn't matter. Like, you have a duty to your job and your audience, to be objective, and if you're an investigative journalist, just see if there's something there. And what I found was none of them would do it. They didn't want to run. It's just what happened with Glenn at The Intercept. They wouldn't run any story, whether factual or not, before an election that would potentially help Trump. And so when you abandon your journalistic responsibility and principles based on partisan hackery, there's a real problem. Now, I understand many felt like the stuff that Trump was doing was just god awful. I get that. I totally understand that. But there are a gazillion stories that describe that every day. We now have, President Biden. We don't know what role his son is going to play, or with China, and whether or not there was influence or anything. We don't know. Is anybody going to look into it now?
We don't know what role Joe Biden's going to play, and he doesn't either.
So yeah, it's a real sad state of affairs, and I don't know, like, where do you go? Like, you can't go to the Columbia School of Journalism. Like, they're gone. Like, where do you go? What is the neutral, independent? You can't go to NPR, PBS. Like, they're gone. What is the independent entity that can not only be the arbiter, but at least be like kind of a guiding force of right and wrong when it comes to objectivity with journalism? I don't see it anymore in the U.S. And again, that's one of the reasons why Julian is silenced.
COVID-19. Again, Trish Wood said that this is most likely worse than the public policy of Vietnam, and it's just an abortion of a policy right now throughout the Western world. You had COVID-19 yourself, and the lack of treatment in the early stages was quite prominent, and it almost took you over the edge. And we may not have had this conversation. Why the censorship? Why the we must not discuss early treatment. Why are they trying to shut all this down?
First of all, yes, I was in the ICU for 8 nights, and I didn't receive early treatment, and I almost died. Then I was in the ICU for 8 nights. I went back, and if it wasn't for a friend of mine who's a doctor, who was an actual medical advocate, him calling up the head of Duke Hospital and just berating him for turning me away, having severe pneumonia and testing positive for COVID. But once I was in there, let me just tell you, Duke was incredible, and the doctors and nurses were unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, it's ludicrous that there are all of these experimental antibodies that we now know work, sitting on shelves all throughout the United States and probably around the world, just sitting there, not being used. And they're not being used because, and I think that the reason why we didn't have early treatment is because of vaccines. There is so much money. I mean, you know how much money Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer are making off of these vaccines? It is astounding.
Squillions.
And at the end of the day, not putting forward, it is a threat to put forward experimental antibodies when they are working as hard as possible to put together a vaccine.
Well, ivermectin.
It's a threat to the financial interests of Big Pharma.
Yeah, ivermectin's a couple of cents to make. I heard this with an interview the other day, and somebody said, if they say it ain't about the money, it really is about the money. Look, there's been little accountability of governments, of public health authorities, big tech and big pharma. What role do you think traditional media -- mainstream media has played in allowing this?
Okay, again, this is all part of an information operation, right? So they're complicit with it. And any critic is being deplatformed. Del Bigtree has a massive following, right? And he produced the film Vaxxed. And he's been deplatformed everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I mean, they're taking him down left and right. They do not want voices that are threats, that are criticizing the information operation and what it is putting forward as the accepted narrative. And anyone who dares to effectively question it is silenced. And you've seen that with Bill Binney, former NSA technologist who helped put together the Stellar Wind Project. Has been one of the leading critics of the Russiagate narrative, that Russia hacked the elections and was WikiLeaks source. They've attempted to silence him and smear him. They're doing the same to Ray McGovern. They're doing the same to me right now. If you go on Twitter right now, type in my name and QAnon, and there are hundreds of posts where people accuse me or Bill Binney or Ray McGovern, who's about as left as you can possibly be, as working with, pedophile exposers or whatever, to literally be the brain trust behind QAnon. And they do that and prop you up, and the critics of the information operation, they do it and they prop those people up, and then they attack in an effort to discredit you. So yeah, it's big, it's happening, and we just got to keep fighting, right?
They say the world's getting smaller, and it really is. How do we attack those censorship when it's coming from big tech and big government, understanding that our voice, mainstream media is gone, they're doing all they can to get rid of the left media, such as Fox and Blaze TV and all those, by getting rid of or telling the carriers that carry that particular channel not to carry it. So they're doing all they can to eliminate the other voice or a discussion. And the same thing with social media. I mean, you've experienced it, we have, many others have. They take this voice away, and what we're doing is just discussing a particular subject, and that's gone. So how do we attack this? How do we get across this? Is there a bridge there, or has the bridge been blown up in the middle?
I feel like it's been blown up. I don't have a solution, but in the short term, what I can tell you is that the few truth tellers that still have a platform, that are out there, support them with everything you've got, and spread their reporting, spread their coverage. People like Matt Taibbi, people like Glenn Greenwald, Lara Logan, Cheryl Atkinson, support them and get their information out there. And then the main thing, and the real key to a lot of this, and the reason why he's behind bars right now, is make a contribution to Julian's Legal Defense Fund. Just go to the website and you can see it right there. Defend Assange. Support WikiLeaks. Support Julian Assange. He is one of the greatest threats to all of this. But there needs to be a gazillion Julian Assange's. Each one of us needs to play a role in getting the truth out and exposing corruption. And don't just look to one like Julian, but ask yourself every day when you get up, just like Julian says in an interview, what are you going to do? Are you just going to die another day and not do anything? Because if you do that, you're losing. Or are you going to make a difference and do something that may be a risk, but you're getting the truth out? And I think if everybody acted that way and lived by those principles, that's how we can beat this stuff.
Look, I have to actually ask you to put on a hat. Now, you're going to put on your wizard hat for me. I need, as we wind this up. So you got your wizard hat on, the wizard, the Trevor the Wizard, we'll call you.
Well, that's ridiculous. And
it's a lovely hat. It's got a red pom-pom on the top of it, but it's really nice. But
where water if I jumped out of a boat, so I don't know about being a wizard, but go ahead.
But where do you think, I mean, this is the, I sometimes sit and ponder and then have another margarita or a whiskey, and the world looks marginally better. But where do you think the world will be at this current rate of censorship, control, misinformation, compliance by fear? Where do you think the world will be in 10 years?
It's so bad right now, man. I don't like to think about shit like that. I mean, V for Vendetta. I don't know. Natalie Portman showing up in a mask. Who knows? It's pretty god awful right now. Let's not risk it. Let's fight. And
you have children too, and you must worry about them.
Yeah, I do. They're nuts. They listen to Kiss. They love
really?
To Kiss.
What's wrong with Kiss?
Oh yeah,
I love it.
It's fantastic. They listen to Kiss, and they play Minecraft, and they're reading a lot, which is great, and that's what I want them to do.
Thank you very much, Trevor. All the best.
Okay, take care.
And that's it for Asia Pacific Today. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Mike Ryan.